Hi, this is Hans from Request for Music, and this is going to be a series about my F-SYN or the formant clone or recreation or whatever you would call it. At the moment, the series of modules consists of 29 modules, a couple of source modules, and a couple of envelope generators and filters and utilities and effect modules and all that kind of stuff that you can create a synthesizer with. Um, uh, the format that I cloned it after, or that I wanted to create the or recreate the workflow most of all, because I had the machine, or I still have the machine actually. Somewhere under a table. I don't use it anymore. I'm so used to software synthesizers and being able to have presets, which obviously you don't have in a normal standard modular synthesizer. But the way it works is exactly the same. So that helps for me since I can get the same kind of workflow. And obviously, there's a whole lot of modules in here, all of those. And as soon as you do a search here on for F underscore, you'll find all of those modules if you might have the bundle, because it's only sold as a bundle with all of that stuff in there. And well, the minimum thing that you could obviously do with something like this is create something like an oscillator that you can take from all of the sources here, and the oscillator needs to have a filter, or it needs most of the time you will want to filter the output from the oscillator, because otherwise it's very rough, very yeah, standard sort of sound, and a filter makes it more usable most of the time, because you start having some filter in there, and the filter can be um, opened or closed using an attack decay sustain release module that I have. And further, you might want to use a VCA, which is a voltage controlled amplifier. So this is sort of the minimum kind of thing that you would need. And you could actually use the ADSR depending on what you want to make in terms of kind of sound. For instance, you could use one ADSR to drive both the filter and the VCA if you want it. So let's do that to begin with. First of all, I need a pitch to drive my VCO, and the VCO, the voltage controlled oscillator, has an external input for that. So I need to go there, and it has an output, and the output needs to go to the input of the filter, which I can find here on the top. I'll see if I can, let's see. So this is my largest size. So I've got my external input here on the VCO that's connected to my pitch, the output of my oscillator, which goes to the input of the filter, and the filter then needs to be driven, because I could do it by just using the attack decay sustain release, which needs a gate input that I can get from the sources on top here, and then the output itself goes to the middle connection here on top of the VCA. And in order to have the filter, in order to have the amplifier being used with or without an envelope, there's this sort of small switch underneath. So if I press that, it's really listening to whatever comes out of the ADSR, and then I can take my output and put that into the input of, or into the output of the main outputs. So it should now respond as soon as I have an output connected, that is. So I need to take my output of my filter and put that into the input. And now I should have a sound, because the filter itself is already turned on a bit, and we have a very standard sound. We have a sine wave here, and you see that there's output values are set for all of those modules. And if I would leave my VCA switch here switched off, I would have the filter sound, or the VCO coming through the filter, coming into the VCA all the time. So if I switch this off, you'll hear the sound coming in there all of the time. So if I want to be able to drive it from the ADSR, from the envelope, I need to switch this on, and now it listens to this. So it means that now as soon as I press the key is sending out a gate which goes into the ADSR, and the ADSR has a couple of knobs that I can set the stages with for the ADSR. So I've got an attack, a decay, a sustain, and a release knob that I can set that with. And at the moment, as a default, the sustain is at 100%, which means that it's going to be full as long as I keep my key pressed. So if I do this, you'll hear the sound all of the time. If I want that shorter, for instance, I could actually take down the sustain to 0 all the way, and then I would actually, because there's a very short attack, decay, and release, I would actually only hear this sort of clicking noise. So if I want that longer, I'll just drive my decay up a bit, and I get this sort of percussive sound. And now if I also turn up my my release, you hear that it's sounding a bit longer then. And now I'm only using this one ADSR to drive the VCA. I could have done it by driving the filter with the ADSR as well. So then I can take my output, and let's take it that way around indeed. So I take an output and I'll put that into my envelope on the filter, and then the red knob, which sort of corresponds to the red knobs on the ADSR, gives you the option of opening a filter. It wouldn't do that much. Maybe just go back a step. I'll take this out again, and first of all take another sound of the oscillator. Now I'm using a saw wave, but still the filter is only in the middle. So that means that if I drive this open or close it, you can actually hear the sound of the filter changing whatever comes out. And to not having to do that manually, I'll take the envelope from that ADSR, so the output from the ADSR, which is an envelope signal, I'll take that into the envelope input of the filter, and then now it opens and closes that sound together with the ADSR. Now let's take this back, then still my envelope listens to whatever comes from this. So, and if I then also turn up my Q knob, which is the resonance, I can get more recognizable sort of synthesizer sounds. And of course I could have actually used a next ADSR. So if I just copy this here and just use this one to drive the VCA, and instead take the other one out and drive it from this ADSR, which then obviously needs a gate as well. Now they are separate from each other, so if I take a longer setting for the VCA while also changing the setting for the ADSR for the filter, I can get these kind of sounds. And actually the filter is the ADSR of the envelope is driven with a positive value at the moment, but I can actually drive it negative as well. It's an attenuator sort of, or it has a positive and a negative side. So if I dial my filter open, I can actually close it by using this ADSR on the other side. So can have something like that. And then obviously I'm only using the low pass filter at the moment, and there's also a band pass. And with the formant, you could actually switch all of those filters on at the same time. So I can have this band pass filter by itself, or a high pass filter by itself. And finally, I also have a switch here that switches between 24 dB, which it is at the moment. So let's make a more standard sort of sound. Something like this, maybe a bit less of that. And you'll hear that the 12 dB filter, which is the other setting, makes more or lets more high pass through. It's not as how do I say that? The angle with which the filter works is less steep than with the low pass filter at 24 dB. So I can change it that way. So if I need a slightly sharper sound, for instance, or which still retains a couple of those higher frequencies in there, I might want to go into a 12 dB filter for that. And to get more recognizable sounds by getting double stuff or something like that, I can actually take the oscillator in there and maybe change, also use some pitch on there and put that same one into the filter. So now I've got double the sound. And of course, normally you would set it very slightly off, so you see that the fine tuning. If I set it at exactly 0, they should be as close as possible. So as they are now, but as soon as I change this fine tuning, you'll hear that you get this double. That kind of sound. So yeah, I'll leave it at that for this point, and I'll get back with more in depth to each and all of the modules. So I'll get back to you later. Cheers. Bye bye.